A weapon system so advanced it can track dozens of threats simultaneously and strike them from miles away has just landed in one of the world's most volatile regions. Russia's S-400 air defense network is now inside Iran. And, well, the entire Middle East is holding its breath. Something quietly shifted in the Middle East over the past few weeks. And while it didn't make front-page headlines everywhere, it's the kind of development that sends ripples through defense ministries, intelligence agencies, and diplomatic corridors from Tel Aviv to Washington to Brussels. According to multiple reports, Russia has begun transferring components of its highly sophisticated S-400 air defense system to Iran. This isn't just another arms deal. This is a strategic pivot that could redefine how military power is distributed across one of the most contested regions on the planet. So what exactly is the S-400? Why does it matter so much? And what does this mean for Israel, the United States, and everyone caught in between? Let's break it down. What is the S-400? Picture this: a mobile fortress on wheels. A system designed not just to detect incoming threats, but to obliterate them before they ever reach their target. That's the S-400 triumph in a nutshell. Developed by Russia's Almaz-Antey Corporation, the S-400 is considered one of the most formidable air defense platforms ever built. It's not a single weapon. It's an entire interconnected network made up of radar arrays, command centers, and multiple types of surface-to-air missiles, each optimized for different ranges and altitudes. Here's where it gets impressive. The system can engage aircraft flying at extreme distances. Some variants can lock onto targets more than 250 miles away. It can simultaneously track over 300 objects and fire at more than 36 of them at once. Fighter jets, drones, cruise missiles, even ballistic missiles in certain configurations, all within its crosshairs. And it's mobile. The launchers, radars, and control units can be relocated, making them harder to pin down or destroy in a preemptive strike. In short, it's a game changer for any nation trying to defend its airspace. Now imagine that level of technology arriving in Iran. Iran's air defense evolution. Well, for decades, Iran's air defenses have been a patchwork of aging Soviet-era systems and domestically engineered platforms. Some of these were functional, others were symbolic at best. Western analysts have long assessed that Iran's defenses, while layered, would struggle significantly against a coordinated attack from a technologically superior air force. But Tehran has never stopped trying to close that gap. Over the years, Iran has invested heavily in upgrading radar networks, developing indigenous missile systems like the Bavar 373, and forging closer military ties with countries willing to sell advanced hardware. The S-400 represents a quantum leap. If fully integrated into Iran's existing infrastructure, this system could provide coverage over critical sites: nuclear facilities, military bases, government centers, oil installations. It could deter or complicate strike missions that might have once seemed feasible. And perhaps most importantly, it sends a message: Iran is no longer defenseless from above. Tehran hasn't disclosed exact timelines or deployment locations. Iranian officials have been measured in their public comments, framing the acquisition as a sovereign right and emphasizing that their military posture remains defensive. They argue that in a region awash with advanced weaponry, strengthening national defense isn't aggression, it's survival. And legally speaking, they have a point. Many nations maintain cutting-edge air defenses without controversy. The question isn't whether Iran has the right to defend itself. The question is what this shift does to the delicate, often combustible balance of power in the Middle East. Let's zoom out for a moment and talk about what defense systems like the S-400 actually do beyond shooting down planes. On the surface, yes, they're defensive. They protect territory. They shield infrastructure. But in the world of military strategy, defense and offense are two sides of the same coin. A stronger shield can embolden decision-makers. It can increase a nation's willingness to take risks, knowing that retaliation from the air might be blunted. It changes the calculus for adversaries who might otherwise have considered military action. In strategic terms, this is called deterrence by denial, making aggression so costly and uncertain that it never happens in the first place. But deterrence is a psychological game, and perception matters as much as reality. If Israel, for instance, believes that Iranian airspace has become significantly harder to penetrate, it may rethink certain contingency plans. It might invest more in stealth technology, cyber warfare, or alternative strike methods. Or it could decide that the window for action is narrowing and act preemptively. Both outcomes are possible. Neither is comforting. Defense analysts are quick to remind us that no system is invincible. Modern air forces have developed sophisticated countermeasures: stealth aircraft that evade radar, electronic jamming that blinds sensors, decoy missiles that overwhelm defenses, and cyber tools that can disable networks before a single shot is fired. The S-400 is formidable, but it's not a silver bullet. Still, it raises the bar. And in a region where miscalculation can spiral into conflict within hours, raising the bar has consequences. In Israel, the news has been met with heightened vigilance. Israeli defense officials are known for their meticulous planning and worst-case scenario thinking. The country's military doctrine has always assumed that it must maintain qualitative superiority over potential adversaries. And when that superiority is challenged, Israel acts. While official statements have been cautious, behind closed doors, intelligence agencies are ramping up surveillance. Satellite imagery is being scrutinized. Signals intelligence is being analyzed. The goal is to understand not just what has been delivered, but where it's being deployed, how quickly it can become operational, and what vulnerabilities might still exist. Israel has repeatedly stated, across multiple administrations, that it will not allow Iran to entrench itself militarily in ways that pose an existential threat. That red line has historically focused on nuclear weapons, but it extends to other capabilities as well. The question now is whether the S-400 crosses that line, or simply moves closer to it. There's also a broader context here. Israel has conducted numerous airstrikes in Syria over the past decade, targeting Iranian military assets and weapons shipments. Many of those operations relied on relatively permissive airspace and limited Syrian air defenses. If Iran deploys S-400 batteries to protect its assets in Syria or Iraq, those missions become exponentially more complex. So far, Israeli officials have refrained from inflammatory rhetoric. But preparedness is a different matter. And preparedness in this case likely means upgrading offensive capabilities to match the defensive upgrade on the other side. Across the Atlantic, Washington is watching closely. The United States has long opposed advanced arms sales to Iran, viewing them as destabilizing and contrary to international efforts to curb Tehran's regional influence. American officials have expressed concern that systems like the S-400 could shield Iranian military activities, complicate enforcement of international agreements, and embolden hardliners within the Iranian government. But here's the complication. The United States has limited leverage to stop this deal. Russia and Iran are both under heavy Western sanctions. They've been economically isolated in different ways and to varying degrees, which has paradoxically pushed them closer together. For Moscow, selling military hardware to Tehran is both profitable and strategically useful. It strengthens an ally, frustrates Western policy, and demonstrates that Russian arms are sought after despite sanctions. For Iran, diversifying its defense partnerships reduces dependence on any single supplier and signals that it has options, even under pressure. American diplomats are faced with a difficult choice: escalate rhetoric and risk further entrenching Russian-Iranian cooperation, or pursue quiet diplomacy and risk appearing passive. So far, the approach has leaned toward the latter. There's been no dramatic public condemnation, no emergency United Nations session, no immediate sanctions package. Instead, the response has been measured. Concern expressed through formal channels, allies consulted, intelligence shared. But make no mistake, this complicates American strategy in the Middle East. If Iran's air defenses become robust enough to deter certain military options, then the tools available to United States policymakers narrow. Diplomacy becomes more essential, but also harder, because Iran's bargaining position strengthens. In European capitals, the tone has been one of restraint. Foreign ministries in Paris, Berlin, and London have urged all parties to avoid escalation. European officials have long advocated for diplomatic solutions to Middle Eastern security challenges, and, well, this development fits uneasily into that framework. Europe's concern is really twofold. First, any significant arms buildup in the region increases the risk of conflict, which could disrupt energy supplies, trigger refugee flows, and destabilize global markets. Second, the S-400 delivery kind of underscores the limits of Western influence. Sanctions haven't prevented the deal. Diplomatic pressure hasn't deterred it. And now Europe must grapple with the reality that other powers are shaping the region's future. Some European leaders have quietly called for renewed dialogue with Iran, arguing that isolating Tehran only drives it further into the arms of Moscow and Beijing. Others have doubled down on the need for strict enforcement of existing sanctions and closer coordination with Washington and Tel Aviv. What's clear is that Europe doesn't want to be sidelined, but it also doesn't want to be pulled into a confrontation it can't control. Then there are the Gulf monarchies, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and others. These countries have spent billions building their own air defense networks, often purchasing American or European systems like the Patriot or Thaad. They've invested heavily in military modernization, viewing Iran as the primary threat to regional stability. The arrival of the S-400 in Iran doesn't directly threaten them in an immediate tactical sense, but it does shift the strategic environment. If Iran feels more secure from aerial attack, it may act more assertively in proxy conflicts across Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. It may feel emboldened to test boundaries, knowing that retaliation is more complicated. Gulf leaders haven't issued fiery statements. Instead, their response has been calculated. Diplomatic engagement continues. Security cooperation with Western allies deepens. And behind the scenes, their own defense procurement continues apace. But there's an underlying anxiety. The Middle East is already a region of fragile truces and simmering rivalries. Adding more advanced weaponry into the mix doesn't ease those tensions. It amplifies them. So why did Russia do this? The answer is layered. First, there's the financial incentive. Defense exports are a major revenue source for Russia, especially under sanctions. Selling the S-400 to Iran brings in hard currency and showcases Russian technology on the global stage. Second, there's geopolitical strategy. Russia has been steadily rebuilding influence in the Middle East, filling vacuums left by shifting American priorities. Arming Iran strengthens a key regional partner and complicates Western military planning. Third, there's the message it sends. Russia is a power broker. It can act independently of Western preferences. It can shape outcomes in critical regions. And it has clients willing to buy what Moscow is selling. For the Kremlin, the S-400 deal is a win on multiple fronts. It's profitable, it's strategic, and it's symbolic. But here's something crucial that often gets lost in these discussions. Delivery doesn't equal deployment. Receiving crates of advanced military hardware is one thing, but making it fully operational is another. The S-400 is, honestly, a pretty complex system. It requires trained personnel who really understand its radar signatures, engagement protocols, and maintenance requirements. It also needs to be integrated into Iran's existing command and control networks. The radars must be calibrated. The missiles must be tested. Communication links must be secured. This isn't plug and play. Experts estimate that achieving full operational capability could take many months, maybe even longer, depending on the level of Russian technical support and the readiness of Iranian forces. So while the delivery is symbolically and strategically significant, its immediate military impact is, well, limited. The real question is, What happens 6 months, a year, or even 2 years from now, once the system is fully integrated and Iranian operators are truly proficient? That's when the strategic landscape really shifts. Step back, and what you're witnessing is a classic security dilemma. One side enhances its defenses, which it views as purely protective. The other side perceives that enhancement as a threat and responds by upgrading its offensive capabilities, which then prompts the first side to further bolster its defenses. And the cycle continues. This is how arms races begin. Not through malice necessarily, but through fear and uncertainty. Iran argues it needs the S-400 to defend itself against nations with vastly superior air forces. Israel argues it needs to maintain the ability to strike Iranian targets to prevent existential threats. Both sides believe they're acting defensively. Both sides see the other as the aggressor. And therein lies the tragedy of it all. In trying to achieve security, each side makes the other feel less secure, and the region becomes more dangerous, not less. So where does this leave us? The short answer, in a state of heightened uncertainty. If Iran successfully integrates the S-400 and operates it competently, the military balance in the Middle East will shift. Not dramatically, perhaps, but enough to matter. Air operations over or near Iranian territory will become riskier. Strike planning will grow more complex. Deterrence dynamics will adjust. If regional actors respond calmly, accepting this as part of the evolving landscape and continuing diplomatic engagement, tensions may stabilize over time. But if miscommunication, fear, or political pressure leads to preemptive action, the situation could escalate quickly. History teaches us that weapons themselves don't cause wars, but they can make wars more likely when trust is absent and communication breaks down. The delivery of Russia's S-400 air defense system to Iran is more than a transaction. It's a signal, a statement about alliances, sovereignty, and the shifting currents of global power. For Iran, it represents a long-sought upgrade and an assertion of independence in a region where it has often felt besieged. For Israel, it's a challenge that demands adaptation and vigilance. For the United States and Europe, it's a reminder that influence has limits and that other powers are actively shaping the world. For the Gulf states, it's another variable in an already complex equation. And for Russia, it's proof that it still has cards to play on the global stage. What comes next depends not on the weapons themselves, but on the choices leaders make in the days and months ahead. Will they choose dialogue over confrontation, restraint over reaction, patience over panic? Because in the end, the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that can shoot down a jet from 250 miles away. It's the miscalculation that starts a war no one intended to fight. The Middle East has always been a region where ancient rivalries meet modern firepower, where one decision can echo across borders and decades. The S-400 is just the latest chapter in that story. But how this chapter ends, that's still being written. Thanks for watching. If this analysis gave you a deeper understanding of what's unfolding, hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the stories shaping our world. Drop a comment below. Do you think this arms deal makes the region safer or more dangerous? I'd love to hear your perspective. Until next time, stay informed. Stay curious. And remember, the world is complicated, but understanding it starts with asking the right questions.